This game will be made entirely out of your YouTube comments. Now then, just as a reminder, I will be making absolutely no profit off of this game. This game is free distribution every week, and I will not be claiming your characters or ideas as my own. I'm doing this solely because I love the idea of the community working together to a project. Submission rules are in the description, and I hope you guys really love it and enjoy. Alright, now to the video. Our first request is from Hikari Kuno, 21. Who's requested that we make a duplicating enemy. And another enemy request by the Invisible Walrus, who wanted an enemy that throws terrain at you. Graphic-wise, I decided to go with an ant-looking enemy for the duplicating one, and a golem-looking enemy for the one that throws terrain at you. Given two options to pick from for the duplicating enemy, I went with the ant because the slime option feels like it's been done to death, honestly, and I thought a golem would be a nice touch for the terrain throwing enemy. It feels very rocky, like terrain or something. I don't know. I was also able to revisit Yoko's first comment and get that grenade idea into the game. The volcano grenade that explodes into a column. Just a little work into the graphical assets for the flame columns and the spawning flame and the explosion itself. And also the icon graphic for when you pick it up in the inventory, and it should be ready to go into the game, along with the enemies and the enemy icons. At this point in the video, you can see me adding in the coding for the volcano grenade. I wasn't specified too much as to how it works, so I just decided to use the harpoon code and just put the grenade into its place. When the grenade comes into contact with an enemy, it'll explode into a flame and deal damage per second to all the enemies that are sitting onto the flame. At this point I jumped into the golem, thinking that the golem would be a little bit harder than the duplicating ant enemy, and I thought it would be a good idea to knock it out first. Little did I know that I was wrong, and this enemy ended up being a little easier to code than the duplicating ant enemy. I don't do a lot with enemies, so this was quite challenging for me. I had to do a little extra research, but I think it came out fine. Get some glowing effects in for the enemy pixel art, and setting up the spawners so that everything works fine. Moving the parts around so that it looks like it's nice and animated, and now I'm working on this actual summoning of the block projectile or terrain being thrown. The creating of the new block is actually pretty funny to code. At first I didn't know exactly what I wanted out of this enemy, and some crazy things ended up happening, blocks being all sideways everywhere, even enemies being placed all sideways everywhere, just a whole bunch of crazy stuff I wasn't expecting. I decided to have the blocks auto-align onto a grid after the enemies were done flinging them all over the place. It just feels a lot more organized. Now it's time for the duplicating ant enemy. I started working on the jumping animation and the duplicating blur animation, and after I got into the code, it ended up being a lot more difficult than I actually thought it would be. All the ants wanted to duplicate into flame skulls instead of duplicating into more ants, and they all wanted to jump simultaneously instead of being their own entity. And yeah, I just haven't had a ton of experience with enemy AI, and I'm getting a little bit better. Unfortunately though, due to their nature of being a duplicating enemy, they lag up the game super hard, and if left alone they swarm even harder. You can see all the energy dropping off of them. It was completely ridiculous. Also, I had a request for multiplayer from Hangy Pants, and I definitely was expecting multiplayer, but when he requested split screen, it kinda caught me off guard. I did look into the split screen stuff, and I decided to see what the limitations of the software actually was. After digging up a whole bunch of stuff, and I seriously mean digging up a whole bunch of stuff, half of the stuff I found on split screen multiplayer was ancient. I found a demo project from like 2009, but I couldn't even use that. So I found a different project and I started breaking it down. It was set up for 2-player split screen, so I started working with it. In the actual game, you can hit the letter M on the keyboard and see all of my efforts so far. I will continue working on it, but until then, I started setting up a world map for the game so that you can choose what levels you want to be on if I add more levels. and I've also changed the functionality for the doors in the lobby room and the door in the level creator. They all just take you to the world map, and you can navigate the world map using the WASD and the left arrow key to choose what level you want to go to. I've also added a second character skin, so that once I get multiplayer started up, the second player won't just be a clone of the first player, and you'd actually be able to differentiate, who's who. And just a reminder, if you want to have your character added into the game, I can do that too, as long as it's copyright free. All the rules in the first episode. I also went back and fixed up the functionality for Yokos' blast boots. They now have the ability to damage and destroy enemies, just increasing the utility and making it a little more fun to use. This is me just switching around, messing around with the new stuff, the grenades, the harpoons. You can summon all the different blocks, the new block, the old block. When you place stuff in, it'll be able to automatically align to the grid now. Character switching at any moment that you want. The music boxes are still functional. I'm gonna add a new one. The enemy spawners. The ant enemy is right there underneath me, trying to attack and jump up and splits a few times. Because they lagged the game, I decided to make it when they go off screen, they die. It just makes it easier to handle. The new enemy type, he's just grabbing blocks and throwing them around. See how the blocks disappear, and then he summons a new one. And you can get damaged by it and stuff. Let me see here. The blast boots, I can kill him with it. Just run into him, and the flyer trails, they destroy him. You can go in and do the flame dash. It destroys the new block type that he creates. You can go in and do the level creator, and it still saves your progress. Whatever you do, you leave and come back, and you can save your game and it stays the same way. You can a new to map button. I also added in a new level here. You can go in and play it out, try it out if you want to see how it works. I used the old centrifuges in this area here, which spin around your gravity from the second video, and it's a pretty nice level idea, I think. Not too complicated. Notice how I can't change anything. You can't change the jumps, you can't add anything, but you hit the star and it considers the level completed, and it now gives you the ability to edit and make changes to it. I can kill the enemies. Well, I could already do that, but I can move around blocks and kill the enemy spawners, is what I meant to say. Create shortcuts, create long cuts. If you want, you could record yourself playing through the level, playing through the game, send it to us as a video response, and we'd love to add it to the community playlist that we'll be making. And I'd also like to thank Michael Randall, who has offered to make music for the game and also offered a funny boss idea. I listened to some of his samples and they're pretty good. He requested that if any of you guys have any requests for music or sound effects, you just throw them in the comments. And we'll try to get to as many of you as we possibly can, so that you can take this with you every week and be all like, yeah, that's my awesome idea in this game. Alright guys, peace!